I don't know why that music is
It's all
on.
right. Well, there it is.
Well, there it is. I don't know.
We
But there's your set.
Yeah, there was certainly no music in the show. There's the set, exactly. So yeah, this is called a struggle session, taking place in China's Cultural Revolution. And to the Western version of the internet and and research in general, it's very difficult to find information about this and difficult to find images, certainly not in color. So I really had to rely and lean very heavily on our Chinese director. His name's Derek Sang. He directed episodes 1 and 2. It was also vitally important to me that I had a Chinese art director with me through all of this. His name's Chapman Khan, and he's an architect in his own right and works in the film industry in London. And without Chapman, I don't know how we would have survived, because I think a lot of the images that we have of China in the West is not necessarily what it's like, to live there and to have experienced this. So leaning on those guys as well as a Chinese graphics team.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah,
God forbid one of those symbols is incorrect, and it's heartbreaking.
Well, exactly. And this is the thing, is that I wouldn't know the difference. So
Right.
in order for it to work, it really had to have the eyes of those 3 Chinese men over it at all times. And the brilliant thing about it was that we had 300 extras on the day. They were all chanting in Mandarin. Derek gave them a fantastic speech beforehand, telling them what the scene was about, because, young people today aren't necessarily aware of the history. And he explained why this was happening and, what the emotion of the crowd was and why. And they had a ceremony to start, and then they went right into, the scene that you see here. So that was a stage that was built in a car park at Shepperton Studios in London. And there's some visual effects extension behind it of the buildings of Tsinghua University. But I actually went on a scout of Tsinghua University online, and it has a number of sort of public spaces. And I remember outlining the biggest one and saying, I bet the struggle session was there. And on the Chinese version of the internet that Chapman was able to access, there were actually photographs of the struggle sessions that used to happen there with the most enormous crowds you can possibly imagine. So it was quite amazing, the information that I was able to piece together, then validated by the research that our Chinese crew were able to provide. And it was just very important to the director and to myself and everyone involved just to tell the truth of what happened. And yes, and from that point of brutality and anguish, be able to get into the head of Yi Wenji and understand why she does what she does at the end of episode 2, when she invites the aliens to come.
Yeah.
Because we can't be trusted.
Can't be trusted. And how respectful that is of the director and producers and everyone to allow those things to be done, and to explain to extras and everyone of why you're here, and not just like funnel in 3,000 people and tell them a chant.
Yes, exactly. And Michael Wilkinson's costumes were all accurate as well. I mean, the color palette there is extraordinary in itself.
I was gonna ask about that, if that was if that was a complete decision, or if that was what it was.
Yes, it's completely historically accurate.
Yeah.
And all of those banners at the back of that stage, all of it is pretty much as it was. And those slogans of Mao's that are seen there, and all of the calligraphy, everything, yes, was absolutely accurate. So I was really proud of all the series. To be honest, I'm most proud of the work that we did to recreate China in those years.
It does very much stand out as like historically something that we don't usually see, I think, a lot of. And so when I at least when I see it, I like focus in, because I want to see what's going on, because we don't really have that. I don't have that history.
And this was a scene of the Chinese logging camp, and we were in a forest in the Surrey Hills of, only an hour or so outside of London. And would you believe the owner of the property let us fell a whole hillside of trees? And
No
the
way.
wonderful thing is that they actually see it as being beneficial because then of all the regrowth that comes through. And so this was really extraordinary, that this was actually
Oh
what you
wow.
see there. Obviously the dish is added by visual effects, but what you see in the foreground, of her standing there and the people in the distance and everything, that was, what we were able to create. And, there was a truck down below, and we had her, as part of the team, pushing
Mm.
logs up onto the truck. All of that was completely in camera. The first two episodes were shot by Jonathan Freeman, who had worked with us on Game of Thrones and whose work is sublime. And yeah, I mean, the amount of collaboration that went into all of these scenes, was really satisfying because, these were people that I'd been working with for a long time. And yeah, to be able to flex our muscles in a different way was
Right.
thrilling. But at the same time, I think we all took it deadly seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say sometimes. Like, I can't work on dramas too long. I got to get back on a comedy every once in a while because it's
Yeah, yeah,
too.
yeah. I
It's
completely understand. And
that's.
yeah, I get it. I totally get it. After Game of Thrones in season 8, when we had all of that, death
Yeah.
and destruction, it was like, I can't, no.
Yeah. You need to
It
get out.
takes it out of you because you literally live
It
it.
does.
And
It
putting
does. You live
yourself
it. Yeah.
inside of these really brutal, horrific events, you can't let your head live there too long because it does take its toll.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine is decorating like monsters and stuff, and I'm like, are you sick of death? Like, are you like done with
Yeah.
Dahmer and serial killers and like?
Yeah, yeah, I completely understand. And
Yeah.
that's actually, we even had real snow for a section of that shoot.
Oh wow.
There'll be fake stuff substituted in there for sure, but yeah, it was
You actually
so,
got it when you
so,
needed it. That's
yeah. And
amazing.
this was one of the first days of shoot, if not the first day.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, it was freezing, absolutely freezing.
Oh my god.
Uh,
So I do want to ask about the design of this, and if this, I'm sure many meetings went into this, but as the designer, when it comes up that it's this material and you're going to see everything, I mean,
well, believe it or not, though, the headset actually came together pretty quickly.
oh,
Being the good designer that I am, I went and did all my research and all that stuff that people like us rely on.
mm,
We always fall back on research, and I had a number of concept drawings that were sort of based on some early VR stuff that NASA had been working on, back in the 80s or whatever, just trying to get the guy's response. And really, in this sort of thing, which I had no real reference for, it was really just about saying to the guys, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Does
mm,
this mean anything? Does that mean anything? And honestly, none of it meant anything. They didn't like any of it. And it was only then that I really understood what they wanted. And that was something that had not only never been seen before, but something that you would never understand looking at it in 2024. There was to be no evidence of an on and off switch, no charging point, no point that any cable would interact with it whatsoever. When you got it out of its beautiful, box that it was delivered in with the name of the gamer embossed on top, the player embossed on top. When you got it out, it would immediately work. There was no
right,
need for it to be charged, no need for anything. And that was it. For book readers, it was important that it be this chrome mirrored headset.
mm,
But exactly as you pointed out, it obviously reflected the whole world. It
yeah,
reflected the crew, the lights, everything that obviously we weren't meant to see. So it was a complete pain for visual effects. There's no doubt about it. They obviously had to go and replace all of those reflections. And then in Wade's office in Black Palace, when I put the mirrored headset onto that black mirrored surface, so
Mm-hmm.
they had to take care of the reflections in the reflections. That's when I really pushed my luck. I think it looked magnificent. I mean,
Oh,
it looks brilliant, but
yeah.
it certainly caused a lot of work for those guys.
I think it's funny because I've recently worked in sci-fi, or even now, things come up, the discussions that go on in designing things of, well, where does it plug in, or how do we do this, and it, there's so many questions that
Mm,
decorators and designers have of like logistics and reality or fantasy, or is it this and that, and there's always this thing as a viewer. I'm watching this. I'm a decorator. I never once thought, where does it plug in? I never once went really into detail about it. Do you know what I mean? As a viewer, we accept things because we're watching this environment, we're into this story, and we
yeah,
accept it. But when we're designing and decorating, there's a
yeah.
million questions that go into these things.
I know, I know. Where does the sound come from? You
Right.
know, where's that? And exactly as you say, I mean, unless you're actually there in the room, you would probably never ask many of the questions we have to answer. But I do think it makes the design better in the long run if you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
justify all of that and make it
Yes.
feel like a real object for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, I mean, I'm not by any means an industrial designer, so it was quite satisfying though, because when we just had a screening in LA a month or two ago, and they had, headsets for the audience to put on.
Oh, wow.
Netflix had these headsets, and to watch people interact with them, outside of the set, but to actually interact with them was really satisfying.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
yeah, to see it as an object in the world was really extraordinary. And yeah, people really um thought the design was was worthy of
Yeah.
trying out,
I,
which
I
again
must say,
means a lot.
Netflix is so clever in their events and FYCs. They either have the best food or
Yeah,
they bring you in for one event and yet you see like all of these other shows. Like they're very clever in it. It's very, very good of them. Um, but
oh,
I also,
and they had, and the way they did
how
it,
many
it was
headsets did they
superb.
have? How many did
Yeah,
they?
yeah, no, they had tons of them. It was, it was
Oh my
great.
God, I'm so mad I missed it. I'm
But
so
yeah,
mad I missed it.
there were just walls and walls of these headsets
Oh, no way.
that the audience were able to souvenir.
Well, I love that you could see the set in the reflection because that always makes me happy. But then I thought, oh man, the prop master, the on-set
But what
dresser
does
must
that
have had
mean?
to get
Yeah,
all
and
those
removing all of the
the
fingerprints and
fingerprints.
protecting them, making sure nobody stole any. And of course, not everybody's head is the same size, so
Right.
every actor needed their own headset who was going to be inside of the game. And yeah, they were a big deal. But
Yeah.
I love the fact that they
Wrap
ended up
gift.
being quite, yeah, exactly. They ended up,
Wrap
that's
gift.
what I was given at the end of the show. Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, but I love that it's ended up being such an iconic piece, and
Yeah.
what a great hero prop.
Oh yeah. No, it's great. And then when we're in this world and
Yeah,
creating this world, and your restrictions must have been endless, right? I mean, it's VR. You have a plot point, but I mean, as design wise, your space is infinite in a sense.
yeah. But working with the guys, it has to feel, again, it has to feel real. So this particular scene shows Jin and Jack inside this boiling cauldron, and they're on this Mongolian balcony with
Which
Kubla Khan.
I have that
Yeah, there you
too.
go.
Yeah.
And so that's actually a shot of the set on stage, believe it or not.
Wow.
Um, and we obviously had to think about special effects in the boiling cauldron and stunts for all of the anti-gravity sort of sequence that would require a lot of wire work. So, pieces of the roof had to be removable.
Mm.
But all of the timber uh, detailing is directly out of, the Mongolian, book of architecture, really. And it's amazing because it's very difficult to come by, to find anything about Mongolian architecture at all. But we happened to buy one book, and that book became our Bible. And this is like the mashing together of all of those wonderful details that we saw. And, they're also surprisingly, there's a lot of paintwork as well, and color and texture. So
Oh
it
yeah.
was fun to be able to do that, that big build. And,
And, and
it's
I
a
don't think
it's a fun scene that takes place there.
I don't have it, but then the interior of that, um, is it like
It's
a
a pyramid.
pyramid? Yes, yeah. I mean
Yeah.
that's an amazing set.
Yeah. So we built that on stage, and we had the exterior with the two Krelan lion dogs sort
Hmm.
of sitting at the door, these giant doors that she then enters into. And then you've got that big interior set, which was meant to be indicative of the Shang dynasty. But
Hmm.
there's so little known about the Shang dynasty that Derek, our director, really just wanted to leave the space as empty as possible,
Hmm.
and free of decoration. It was a huge set, but yes, there was very little decoration in it, but it did allow for that big I Ching mandala, to do its thing, and
Yeah.
for that scene to take place in there. So the emptiness of it served the scene well, but it is a little bit odd for me to not want to, you know, create texture and pattern in other places. I just had to let the scene play out, and then you would get that amazing design on the floor. So yeah, that's how
Yeah,
it
Andrew had
kind
the
of
day off, huh?
evolved.
Like
No,
no,
exactly.
no.
It
Um,
was we were lurching from one to another constantly.
how how many builds did you have? Like how many stages did you have? Like what is the scope of your footprint for this all these builds?
Um, oh, I can't even remember now. I sort of, as soon as I finish something, I tend to just
Yeah, you plug it.
delete everything that I no
Yes.
longer want to remember.
Get all your
It wasn't as
scalp
big as you
picks.
would imagine, actually, because we were literally like tearing down and building, tearing down and building. And we
Mm.
had a number of stages off site as well. We were building in the car park. We were building everywhere we could, but London was absolutely jumping at this point. So it was very, very difficult to get stage space.
Oh well.
And we were building anywhere that we possibly could, that was close by, or as I say, in the car park, anywhere to give us some space. But this particular set, that Mongolian balcony, Kublai Khan's balcony there, that took up an entire stage. The Red Coast base main control room that we were talking about before, it took up an entire stage.
Oh, wow.
um, yeah, we had a number of really big sets to build, and you know they would be built and then very quickly torn down to
Taking
be
them.
replaced by another. So yeah, it's really a game of it's a big jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? I quite enjoy that aspect of it, actually, figuring
Yeah,
out,
well
well, this will
that's
take this long to build, and bring that one in and get rid of that,
good
rebuild that.
art. I mean, art directors and set designers and fitting all those into the space and can we build this over here and that's a whole game in itself of like
It is, but also, I often feel sorry for set deck, because you sort of get a bit trapped in all of that,
of
because,
course.
construction tends to be the department that dictates how that goes. And it feels like, that the set's, still wet, and, the paint's still drying as set deck are moving in. And, there's a lot that's involved in order to get these things done. And then when people like stunts want to come in, or, special
Yeah.
effects or whatever, everybody's crowding over the same space. So it takes a lot of planning, these big sets.
Especially as you're saying like stunts and you got to make the set safe and make sure everything's in there so when they're practicing and when they're rehearsing you can't just say like, oh, by the way, there's a huge, dining table in the middle of the room that I didn't put in. Like you have to have everything
Mm,
there and they need time to practice. That is logistically a thing too that we deal with. I rarely ever say that, but like I mean more and more shows have stunt coordinators and big fight scenes and everything. Like it's a
yeah.
lot. It's a
And they
lot.
need to rehearse in the real
Yeah,
space.
and they
They
should.
can do a certain amount off stage, but
Yeah,
at a particular point in time, they need to come in and rehearse with the real thing.
yeah.
So we have to be ready.
I'm ready. It'll be ready.
I mean, as much as I can try and fight them off, I'll always lose. So I might as well
Yeah.
just be ready.
Except when they're like, "Well, we want to come in on Monday." I'm like, "I didn't even get the set yet." So cool. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
I
Ah, there
love
we
this
go.
room. I love the wall. I love that.
Yeah.
The
So it was weird, actually, the design of Wade's office, because we were shooting on location in the pathologist's uh, building in central London, and there's a scene early on where Darshi's in his office, and there's um, some other spy type people out in a bullpen. We never really see them very carefully. The scene was meant to be much bigger,
mm.
and for that we actually shot on location.
Oh.
But then Wade's office needed to be built on stage. But I was able to use all of the architectural language that had been set up on location. So I felt very fortunate because that beautiful coffered ceiling
Mm-hmm.
that's there, that was as it was on location. And so it gave a lot of, it just created a lot of weight in that room, which I'm not sure, had I have presented it as a design piece myself, whether I would have been given permission to spend that much money on it, if you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
because I was copying the existing
Right.
location, it got through the system. And the idea of Black Palace was that it was meant to be a windowless building. And so that's why I sort of developed those fins, and we used them on location as well to block out the real windows
Mm.
that were on location. And so then we just built them as part of our set, as it was here.
That's beautiful.
The desk was built by us as well. And
Oh.
the wonderful thing about Liam Cunningham is, as an actor, is he knows exactly how to use the spaces that you give him. And I think he loved that room. And
Mm.
even, later in the season and other places, he comes up to me and he'd always say, now Deborah, where's your favorite part of the set? I just need to make sure we get to see it.
Oh
you need,
God,
do you
what a
need, do you need me
gem.
to, I know, what a gem. And he says, do you need me to walk over there? If I walk over there, the camera will follow me. So is that your favorite? You just tell me, where do you want to see me?
Can
I mean,
every
isn't that
actor be
just
taught
fantastic?
that?
Yeah, I mean, he's so considerate of what the art department's doing and what we're trying to do. Like he can see that the space has some sort of psychological impact on his character, and he wants to be able to portray that as clearly as possible. And the power play that's in that room is really fascinating.
Oh yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Both
when you
of those
see
actors
great
are,
actors like those
yeah,
guys,
they're fantastic. The
aren't
both of
they?
them are
Yeah.
so fantastic. I would watch them in anything. They're both
Yeah,
great.
and yeah, the whole show could be about those two, and I'd
Yeah.
watch them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great, and the beautiful timber paneling on the side.
Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
it was a really great space, which was then later converted into the boardroom
Mm.
that they're in when you see all the UR bugs come up across the
Oh
screens,
yeah.
and yeah, so
Bugs.
that particular build had to do a bit of double duty.
Mm.
But yeah,
That's,
I really enjoyed working with his office and seeing him inside it. It was really joyful.
is that a skull on the pedestal over there? I don't know if we get to see that.
Yeah, it's like a Russian, not a Russian, I beg your pardon, a Roman helmet.
Mm. Oh, Roman. I know. Oh,
So
like a
it's a piece of sort
patine.
of, because he's into antiquities,
Mm.
so that was there. But for a moment there, I was trying to sell the guys on, Jeff Koons rabbit, that
Oh yeah.
metallic rabbit, like the
Mm.
balloon animal rabbit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, I've never seen Dan Weiss, our showrunner, more offended.
Oh.
It's like, no, it's not that. And I said, well, I just, like it's sold for some enormous amount of money at auction recently. Like
Right.
it's not nothing. Like I know you don't
Right.
like it, but within the art world, it's really significant. No.
Yeah. No. No is a
And
no.
yeah,
Solid effort.
exactly. Like there's some things that are just clearly no. And yeah, the balloon rabbit was one of them.
That's really funny.
Yeah, but I love that. As it turns out, I
Yeah.
really love that. With the Roman helmet, and
Yeah.
just on that one pedestal is It's actually really effective. But we went through, poor Andrew and I, and his dresses, we must have dressed about 10 different versions of that space to show the guys, you know, do
Oh,
you want a
wow.
credenza? Do you want any, you know, do you want other chairs, like this chair, you know, guest chair, stools, this,
Yeah.
that, the other thing. And yeah, that's sort of what they settled on. But Andrew would have rented easily, I don't know, 20 times the amount of furniture
Right.
just
We
to
have
try.
to.
You have to, yeah.
I don't like to. I'm pride myself on being a one sofa decorator, but sometimes you have to bring in three. You have to
Well, you really
audition.
do. You
You
really do.
do. It
And
depends what the
it's
scene is, and is it going to
and part
work?
of the show and tells, you know, is
Yeah.
to be like, well, you know, what works? Is it this or is it that? So I actually really enjoy those kind of meetings because, you know, it's there that decisions really get made. Whereas when people are looking at a concept or even at a model box or whatever, you know, it still feels abstract. But the minute you've got a piece of real furniture and you're standing in a space, people instantly have firm opinions, and I love that.
Yeah, or even for us as like our, our buyers go out and you pick this great sofa and then you get it in and somebody sits on it and they like
Oh
sink.
no, yeah,
They
yeah, yeah,
completely sink and you're like,
yeah,
"Oh no, somebody go get a board, put it under the cushion," or like, "Can we
yeah,
put
yeah,
more
yeah,
pillows in the cushion?" Like, "I love
yeah,
this sofa. I hope are they going to sit on
yeah,
it? You're not going to sit on it, are you?"
yeah. Yeah, I completely understand. Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, like you've got to foresee all
Yeah.
difficulties. But yeah,
But
and
those
I
that happens once, maybe twice, and then you from then on you're like, "Can you please sit in the sofa before we rent it?" Or like
Yeah, exactly.
before I
Try it
so
out.
to see it.
But I must have, I mean, only you'll, you know, only set decorators will understand this, set dressers, is see in order to power that desk lamp there.
Oh yeah,
So,
to
you know,
hide
the
that cord.
cord goes behind that leg and then down into the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Put that
was, you
in.
know, hidden in that, and it was, you know, so very early I had to be able to say exactly where we wanted that desk. So
Yeah.
that particular hole for that cord could be
Yeah.
made. And yeah, we had to do reshoots, and unfortunately that position on the floor had been lost. And yeah, I was like a dog with a bone about it. No, 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 the cord has to
It
go
has to
like
be.
this.
Yeah.
No, it can't lump up the carpet square, the carpet tile. No, 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 that needs to be flat. This
Yep.
needs to
It's got to
happen.
go into the
So
floor. Yep.
all things, it ended up being that chord that was the most difficult to achieve in terms
I
of elegance.
I believe that. I've been there. I've done that. I've seen where it dangles and you're like, that's not the set for chords. And you just,
No, I mean some sets would be
some,
fine,
yeah.
but for Wade, he would never approve of that, so it had to be perfect.
I'm just getting to the point. I just auditioned some lights for lighting that are like battery operated. They don't give enough power off.
Yeah,
For
right.
if that's your only
Yeah,
source, which I
yeah.
think, things like this, when it's your only source, you can't do battery operated or USB charging or whatever.
No.
But I am starting to like, especially like when you're doing restaurants and everything, and it's just table lamps. They're starting to accept the battery
Yeah,
operated and USB, and it's so great because you don't have to
yeah.
deal with all those cords on every
Do
table and making holes in the linens and all that. So
yeah,
great.
yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
this was the same, trying to hide the cord, you know, and it
right.
was, yeah, annoying. But I really liked this little set
I love
because
this. I love this I love this set.
yeah, it was really stylish for what it was, I thought. Particularly when we're used to seeing these sort of police cells, um, interrogation cells, you know, we see them a lot, but not like this. And yeah, there was, you know, the mortar lines being white on this sort of shiny black painted brickwork
Hmm.
was something I really had to fight for. Actually, it wasn't everybody's cup of tea, or you know, there was a lot of like, I don't know if I like that. No, it's just had to be like, trust me. I think you
Yeah,
need, like, if you're in a small room with no windows, you need to give them something to play with. You need to provide light and texture.
yeah,
And it gave the cinematographer something to play with too, because he was able to use sort of a sense of perspective with it. Um, you know, those big bands in those doors there, you know, they give it more texture as well. It was in its simplicity, I think it worked.
Yeah.
And we had a plywood ceiling and a concrete floor. So we sort of reversed it instead of having the concrete ceiling and
Mm.
the timber floor. So yeah, it was an interesting space, and I was really happy with the way Minky Spiro shot it. I think she really understood what I was trying to do and the graphic nature of it,
Yeah.
and the shots reflect that. So I was thrilled.
I think graphically it works, the simplicity of it, and the
Mm,
lighting fixture to me is like it's hard to find simple lighting fixtures that don't look they're from like they're go in a garage, or like that
mm,
it's too modern, it wouldn't be there. Like this, it's a really nice fixture for this, and it's the only thing for me is like it's dead on, but I need that in this frame. Like I
mhm,
get why it's that way because she needs it to light, but graphically it works so well with the wall behind.
mhm,
It just works off of
mhm.
itself. It's so great.
Yes, yeah, and the set is called the Black Palace. So
Mm,
I leaned into the black very heavily,
right.
which again was not always popular, but I really think that it works. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't regret any of the design decisions in here at all.
The black table, but I mean, yeah.
Mm,
And the
mm.
scene is so fantastic between
Well,
them.
it's just a game of tennis between them,
Yeah.
isn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah, to actually just let the design, yeah, to let it just graphically play out visually yeah, is a treat, I think.
And in the design process, when you're reading the scripts and everything, is that what you're designing for too? When you hear the dialogue and everything, and you're taking all these things into account, like how far along in your process do you get to this? Is this like, I know what I want to do? I want to do.
No, this required a bit of back and forth, but I think for me, it's just understanding the shape of a scene that
Mhm.
helps understand the shape of the set that will be built. And we've all seen interrogation rooms on television before and are familiar with the fact that they're sort of quite small. Minky, our director, was really wanting some double-sided glass, something that she could use to help her, to give her another surface to play off. The guys weren't at all interested in that. They felt like that was something that belonged in another show, not in this one.
Right.
So it really just was, the four walls. And so understanding that made me realize, okay, they really want it pared back.
Right.
And yeah, by trying again and again, it was stripped back to this.
Oh, I love it.
and and I love it, and I love the way it works. It plays against Wade's office, and later on, or actually it ended up being earlier. We shot it much later.
Mm.
You see Darshi's war room where he's got all of the images and of all of the dead scientists and how they all link
Yeah.
together. So just
Pull
trying to
that forward.
develop what Black Palace looks like and all of the different rooms, I ended up really enjoying it. It was,
Yeah.
trying to see that building and how architecturally it all sort of works together was great fun.
I love it. I love this little world, this little like detective world, and no one.
Mm,
And I like how it's like, well, who are you? Are you KGB? Are you?
exactly.
Like, what are
And
you?
who
Why are
are
you
these
here?
people? Yeah, who do you work for? Yeah. And then this is a similar kind of thing, isn't it? Where it's like, who is this woman?
Yeah. Who is this
Yeah, it's
woman?
like
And
the head of this cult. The three body logo was something that we designed without even realizing it. One of our concept artists had put it in a concept that he was doing for our uh, rehydration pools.
mm,
In the VR game when they throw those sort of yoga mat like skins into the water and there's the
oh yeah,
rehydration. Um,
so weird.
we were trying all of these sort of how to break up the pools in the wider VR world. And like, was it just one big pool, or were there sort of smaller pools that went with these dehydrators, the buildings that contained all the skins? Like, how would this be done? And, just trying to understand the scale of what we were doing. And he had this design in the center of one of the pools. And yeah, and our showrunners just went, that's it. That's the 3-body logo.
Oh my God.
And so then it was a matter of using it everywhere we could. As a matter of fact, the plan of the Mongolian balcony that I was talking about earlier is pretty much the 3-body logo. And I was using it everywhere I possibly could. And so it was a great way to establish a stage for Yuwenji when she's, you know, talking to all of the people that she's got there, you know,
Yeah.
listening to her plans. Yeah, so working again with Minky, we were in a barn, you know, out in the hills somewhere in the country, and we had all of the screens that had the projections on them, and yeah, coming up with a design that was going to be animated across those screens. That was a very arduous process as well, just to figure out what the guys wanted and what kind of energy the guys wanted in the space. You know, it was like, is it wafting wheat in a field? Like, is
Right.
it pictures of humanity? Like, what's she trying to sell? And then it ended up being this kind of quite 3-body kind of, it almost could have been the title sequence in a way, that's rolling across those screens. And we did a lot of tests as to what it was like when people were in front and behind the screens, what it would be like if a gunshot were to have hit one of those screens, what would happen. There was a lot of R&D in this sequence and how that was going to work. So yeah, it was a hard-earned sequence, this one. You know how some things come together quite easily?
Yeah.
And then others don't. This was a
And then
more
you're like, we're
challenging
shooting
one.
it in a barn. I got a stage and some shit. We'll be fine. And then you're like, what?
Yeah, we'll be fine. We'll put up some screens. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's obviously going to be more detailed than that.
Well,
So
projection
yeah,
while they're filming, and is it the right speed? Is it,
exactly.
fluttering, and is it digital? Are they real screens, or are they just
Yeah,
projected? And it's a whole
yeah.
process, and
It's a
getting
whole
many of them.
process. And we set it up in one of the stages in Shepparton. Like we were able to take, you know, one of those stages that we weren't using at one point. Like there was a precious window that we were able to use to do some, you know, experiments in there. And yeah, it took a bit, you know, and obviously the people that we were working with on the screens, they weren't film people, you know, they were event
Right.
people. So, you know,
Right.
it's, you know, the same but different. It took a lot of work, this one, to really iron out all of our errors. And the space was actually quite narrow, probably a bit more narrow than Minky would have preferred. Yeah, so we had all sorts of issues to work with, but yeah, in the end, and you know, the way the photography worked in there, you know, I think it was quite effective
Oh
and
yeah.
gave a very strong sense of the space.
It's also another great scene of like, what is, because I feel like too, when you're watching this, you're constantly trying to piece things together.
Yeah,
So this
exactly.
is, it's like, oh, something's happening here.
I know. And even when we were making it, we were just trying to piece together what we were making. Like, you know,
Yeah.
what are we doing
Yeah.
now? Okay, right.
I feel like I was really like there pretty much till episode 3, and then it was like, oh, I must have left it running while I did the laundry or something. I came back and I'm like, I don't know what's going on now. I gotta rewind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've really got to pay attention.
Yeah, you gotta pay attention. And then
Yeah.
and then like
And then this happens.
I could not find I could not find a picture that captured what went on here. So this is the only
Hmm.
one I could feel like, like dividing or just slicing a ship while it's
Yes.
moving
Yes.
is, the concept of it is like, all I could think of is one of those like egg slicers that like
Yeah. Yeah. And we spoke about one of those egg slices.
yeah.
So the theory for all of this was actually set up in episode 2 when we go into Augie's nanotech lab and we see the diamond cutting machine, and she demonstrates that the diamond, that piece of synthetic diamond that she has to raise up through those nanofibers, and then she taps it with the end of her pen, and you know the diamond falls apart. So in that, our consultant particle physicist was explaining to us that it's very important that then the fibers stay static and the thing that's being sliced has to move through them. So then that sets us up for the Judgment Day sequence. And we shot that in all various stages. And it was very, very hard work to break it down into understandable pieces. This happens first, then that happens, then that happens, then that happens, so that visually we can follow what's going on. So we started out in Dorney Court in the Olympic rowing facility, and we were shooting on the
Oh.
side of the lake there. And it's there that you see Wade and the engineers kind of setting up, where the events to take place. You see the divers come out of the water,
Mhm.
and they're sort of working on the side. We shot in a trailer, like this high-tech kind of trailer with all the screens that would be watching, and you see Augie in there with Wade and Raj, who are, orchestrating this sequence and watching it as it goes. We also built the half of the deck of the tanker in the car park, and we landed the helicopter on the deck for real
Mhm.
when UNG visits it earlier. And we had the children playing. We had all of that sequence of Mike Evans walking along and everything. Like, that was all done
Oh, wow.
out in our car park. Obviously, visual effects extended that deck into the full tanker size. Then we went indoors and we built 2 corridors. We had what we called the executive corridor, which is where Mike Evans' office and Felix's office were. And we also had the public corridor, and it's there that you sort of see that little school with the backpacks, and then you go into the sort of cafeteria. You see all of that slicing, and then there's the stairs where Mike Evans sort of jumps and falls,
Mhm.
and
Into like that
where,
boiler room type
yeah, that boiler
thing.
room. So that was all a build. And then there was a fantastic big build of all of the debris when you see Raj kind of, walking through it, and when they eventually find that hard drive. So it was just all about, making us understand all of the stages and what would be sliced when, and what direction Mike Evans was running in. Like,
Right.
what direction, like when
Right.
people were panicking, and we actually paced it out so we knew exactly what speed the tanker was traveling at and what would be cut first. And we bored the socks off everybody. Minky and I must have had thousands and thousands of meetings with special effects and visual effects. So first of all, backpacks, then you see fire extinguisher, then you see light, then you see pipe, then you see this, then you see that. And we had these LED lights going down the corridors illustrating where the slicing was at that point, and pointing at, and then it's clocks, and then it's poster, and then it's
Right.
this, then it's that. So we understood exactly what was going when and where, and special effects worked out exactly what pace it was. And it was a really intellectually quite difficult sequence to
Yes.
wrap
I
our
think
heads around. Yeah.
because it's not all digital. Like the
No, it's
practicality
not.
of building all this and then coming in and making those slices and things like that. But
And then
all of the
resetting them
steps, yes,
for
it's not just done
for them to
once.
shoot it again.
Yes.
Exactly.
But the
All the
logistics,
magnets holding everything together.
well, so that's what like all the frames that came down and
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and
So visual effects had to remove the cut line on the
right.
frames, we had to remove the
Right.
cut line on the backpacks and all that stuff. But yeah, it all fell in real life.
Oh my God, that's great. It's isn't our job crazy?
It's crazy, but special effects, I mean, the works that those guys did was incredible. And, going and testing everything again, like Andrew's team had to go and buy, endless amounts of backpacks for him to try, you
Right.
know, like there was some that were too heavy, wouldn't work. Okay, right, we need a smaller one. Like, okay, so this belongs to the little kids,
Right.
and just figuring it out that way.
I
It
mean,
was,
the scene is you can't even
it's a
describe it
bit,
to people. Like I've
yeah, it's a
tried,
bit
I tried.
bonkers,
I was
isn't
like,
it? Yeah.
you don't even know. You just have to watch it. Like the scene is unbelievable, and what they
Yeah.
accomplished, and just in your mind of like something coming towards you like that, and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
no,
And just also, when they slice all the people, it's
I
just
know,
quite,
I know.
yeah, it's gruesome. But
It's sad because it's
yeah, very much
kids.
so. And when you see that, can't tell you how many times we talked about the guy hosing the deck of
Oh yeah, it
Judgment
was like
Day.
one leg and then or something.
Yeah. Well, and
That's it.
Minky, it was her idea. That the hose that he's using is cut first, so then the water supply is gone. So then he turns around to try and figure out what's going on, and that's when he's
Right,
sliced. So
right.
it takes a certain brain to want to think of how that works step by step by step. And she had that. It's funny how our brains work, because I just think of how it is visually, whereas she's trying to think of it in terms of cuts,
Yeah, and
and
story.
literal slices.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't really wait to ask you about this because I can just assume how much work went into this sequence. Just a tremendous amount.
Yeah, and this is, of course, the sequence I was referring to earlier when I said, Minky was putting up her hand saying, I'm going to need some help with this.
Yeah.
And, and I was like, just get in line.
Yeah.
We got a Mongolian balcony we're building,
I gotta
and
be in the right state of mind to talk about Judgment Day. I
yeah,
can't just
yeah,
like I just can't whip
yeah.
over to the ship talk.
No, exactly. And also the degree of resolution that it took,
Mm,
yeah, meant that it really occupied a lot of brain space and a lot of time. And
yeah.
exactly as you said, you need a bit of blank space in there to fill it with the new thing. And, Judgment Day, it took up a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah. Well, it shows. It's a great scene, and of every department. I mean, it's just a great visual scene. It's fantastic. Do I have one left? Oh no, I don't.